Well, Mel and Jim Taylor say they've had the privilege of serving as specialist caregivers for Oranga Tamariki for over 23 years. During this time, they've cared for over 450 youth, primarily teenage boys, who have been placed with them. Generally, due to their high and complex needs, many of these young individuals have been considered amongst the most challenging cases within Auckland, Northland, Bay of Plenty, and other regions across New Zealand. But last month, they resigned. And in their resignation letter, they said, quote, "The policies and procedures we've encountered have often been out of touch and unrealistic. Over the years, we've experienced repeated instances of dishonesty, threats to our family's safety, serious defamation and unconstitutional treatment. We've witnessed more abuse by Oranga Tamariki towards caregivers and young people in their care than anywhere else. We are deeply disheartened by the way we've been treated by Oranga Tamariki, especially in recent years. And moreover, we're appalled by the treatment and failures experienced by many of the young people in our care. Oranga Tamariki's self-preserving actions and disregard for the truth have led to innocent individuals being unjustly deemed guilty." End quote. Well, when the caregivers are not cared for themselves and are not treated with respect, is it any wonder that there is a dire shortage? So in this episode of McBlog, we talk to Mel about their decision to resign as OT caregivers. Hello, Mel, and many people will recognise you because you're one of the panellists for Straight Talk, and you've also, you've been our unofficial spokesperson on child abuse issues for many, many years, and so you've been in this space. But look, this resignation letter, 23 plus years, you felt like you were giving it all, but you and Jim, just reached the end of the road. What led you to this?
Lead us to this. The policies, like you mentioned, the policies and the procedures that go on within OT are unrealistic. They're not grounded. I've always said that actually the higher up you get in Oranga Tamariki, the less understanding they have of what's actually going on the ground. And you almost need good caregivers, good social workers, frontline workers to be creating policy. And it's a high risk job. And that's not just while you're working it, that's forever.
Mm. Now, you said in your resignation letter that you had been defamed. What did you mean by that?
There are a lot of social workers, supervisors that will speak against us, that will speak against other caregivers. If you fight for the young people and take on Oranga Tamariki, you're not appreciated. It's not good. We've had so many social workers tell us what they've heard from management, not to approach us because we're just troublemakers. They don't like fighters at the end of the day.
And when you say threats to personal safety, I mean, I would expect that if you're taking in some pretty troubled boys, that is a threat to your personal safety. Is that what you're referring to? Or is it that when there have been threats, you haven't felt protected, you haven't been defended by Oranga Tamariki?
We always had a really strict intake policy because our own children were with us. So one of the things was we don't take sexual abusers. We're always, I guess, concerned about allegation makers. So there's a set of questions that we've always asked when a young person, they're asking for a young person to be placed. They've disregarded that. We have had sexual offenders, even though that was a no-go by us. And we've found kids hiding in the corner of our own children's bedrooms, waiting to who knows what. You ring, you ask for the young person to be removed as a safety for everyone in your house. And they're like, they'll be all right overnight, or we'll come back tomorrow, or there's no placements right now. What can you do? And they're willing to put your own family at risk, let alone the other children that they have there.
So they want your loyalty, but they don't seem that loyal. So are they actually putting in the sex offenders without telling you? Is it non-disclosed?
It's yes, they have, and yes, they have known. They just haven't told us.
Wow.
And that hasn't been just once either. And you don't want to find out the hard way.
You also refer to innocent individuals being unjustly deemed guilty. You're talking about caregivers in this respect?
Yes, I am. So the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in Oranga Tamariki and, other places, churches, run institutes and things, that was really, really important. And I'm wrapped that they did it. That was a really good thing. It brought to light a lot of abuse that hadn't been brought to light before. What has happened through that, though, is that a young person, maybe after 20 years in care, can go and they can make a historical claim against a caregiver. They do not have to say anything in particular. There is no investigation. There's no anything that happens around that. They can get it's around $20,000 payout, and the caregivers can be deemed guilty with no investigation, no police coming in to discuss anything, absolutely nothing. They can say, right, you've had 2 historical claims from kids that have gotten payouts. You can't say anything to anyone, you can't do anything, and you can't have kids in your care. Or there have been caregivers that have faced that and have gone, oh my gosh, this is so scary. And we know of quite a few kids, especially in the jails. Apparently, the young people get together and go, oh, I'm going to get my 20 grand payout. I'm just going to throw these caregivers under the bus. And that's more common than not. So it's a catch-22, the whole system, and, getting money and, taking down caregivers. Then there are other people I'm working with that are adults now, and they deserve a claim. They deserve to have their voice heard, and they haven't done anything. So we're going through the process of actually exposing all the rubbish they've been through in their life.
I mean, 23 years, you must have seen a change in the nature of client coming in, would you? I mean, in terms of the level of violence, the level of dysfunction, level of breakdown, has it got worse over the last 23 years, or is it just we see more of it, or what's happening, do you think?
It's almost undoable now. We had a really, really high success rate in the beginning, and there were times that we had 10, really challenging young people in our care at once. And they were just from broken families. They're all good kids, just dysfunctional families, product of their environment, just really sad stuff, but really easy to work with. And now what we see is a lot more mental health. We've had kids come into our care that have said, if you don't do what I want when I want, I'm going to ring OT and make a complaint against you and lay false allegations. So we've got these kids now that are totally empowered, and they know it, and the system allows for it.
I did accidentally, just at the beginning, flick to this report, which we were going to talk about, the experiences of care in Aotearoa. It's a government-appointed group that does a yearly monitor. This is their 4th report, and one of the headlines by the media was that the amount of abuse of children in care had increased. Now, immediately when I read that, I thought, wow, that's more caregivers abusing kids. But then when I read the report, it actually said that actually most of the harm was by kids on kids. So violent kids attacking others, bullying within the system, and not actually by resident staff or by caregivers. I mean, is that kind of what you've been up against, is that you're doing an unthankable job, and it also comes with this kind of negative slight as well. You just can't win.
Oh, you can't. And these kids are really, really violent. They've come, a lot of them have come from gang families, and that's all they know, and there's something to prove. And there's been no consequences for actions for them. So why not? There's so much trauma in these kids. It's just unbelievable. Really, really sad. And no consequences, no anything. Violent as, and it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's a 24/7 job. And there can be triggers for a young person at any point. It can be something about, a joke, a joke about someone's mum, and then it's all on and it's instant. But yeah, these are really violent kids. And of
Yeah.
course, you have to write a report if something happens, and then there's an investigation, and then, or they're picked up by the police, and then they're just sent to another home.
Now, as part of that report, I was also interested to note this chart, which talked about the ethnicity, and sadly, the big disproportionate representation of Māori going into care, but also Pacifica slightly, very low representation from Asian there. Does that chart surprise you? And why do you think there is this disproportionate representation from Māori, especially because, I mean, you are in the far north, so this is an area that, has a strong Māori population. What's going on? How do we strengthen families?
Oh, policies and procedures, they've been attacking the family unit for decades now. It's just horrific. Those stats, yeah, I would absolutely believe them. I'd say, excuse me, probably about 90% of the young people we've cared for have been Māori. And it's generational dysfunction. So they've come from a broken home, and their parents came from a broken home, and their parents came from a broken home. And you've got all these cycles of abuse that have happened from generation to generation to generation.
Can we break that?
Absolutely, we can break it. But it's going to take a lot, and there's a lot of backtracking to do. And we don't seem to have governments or policy creators that know where to start, let alone even want to attempt it. And that's another problem within Oranga Tamariki, is that they can go and you can have a new government and they're like, oh, we need to change the name from SIFS to Oranga Tamariki. That didn't fix anything,
Window
absolutely
dressing.
nothing. I remember we had about 6 young people in our care, new government. We were told choose 4 to leave because the new policy states you can only have 2 children in your care and 1 emergency placement, and then it'll change again. So you've got all these social workers trying to catch up with what new policy's going on all the time. It's just change, change, change. And there's been no government I've seen in the years we've been working that have even begun to address the problems and why there are so many youth in care and why it's disproportionately Māori.
Well, that was one thing that I noticed in this report as well, and it looked at changing caregivers, and it said that a quarter of those 10 to 14, so where the kids are 10 to 14, have had 6 or more caregivers during their time in care. And for those under 5 years of age, at least half of those have had 6 or more caregivers. I mean, that chopping and changing different caregivers, you don't even get the chance to settle down. I mean, that must be, not only have you come from a very unstable background, but the caregiving system is also unstable. You're getting flicked around from caregiver to caregiver. And part of me wonders, is this because we're simply not treating caregivers with the right respect?
I think also it's because a lot of caregivers don't have the tools to deal with the high complex needs that are coming through. They don't have all the backing. The trauma that comes from what I've seen is the trauma that a youth goes through going from home to home to home is absolutely heartbreaking. We know youth that have been in so many homes, it's actually sickening. And it continues. And yet, as an ex-caregiver, I can't speak out on a lot of these young people individually because there's all this confidentiality clauses and, that go with it all. But it's horrific. And yeah, that what young people are facing, what they're going through, the issues they had, the ADHD, the fetal alcohol, which is huge, is just ridiculous. And mental health are so quick to diagnose, or doctors or whoever, and say, right, that young person's got ADHD, let's put them on medication. ADHD can actually, it can come through as ADHD when a young person actually has severe trauma. And there is nowhere near enough specialists, clinical psychologists in our country to deal with the amount of children we have in care that have the most heartbreaking trauma stories. It's just the system's failing them over and over again.
So I know you're not one to be quiet when you see a problem. When you spoke up, what was the response? Were you heard? Was your concerns received and considered? And did you feel you were being heard, or were you just shut down?
Oh, we knew we would just be shut down. I think they were happy to say goodbye to us and not have us fighting them all the time. Speaking out, I can see why a lot of caregivers don't speak out. It's really scary. Oranga Tamariki are a law unto themselves, and it only takes meeting up with a few old kids that have major issues and saying, hey, there's 20 grand, and you sure nothing happened in that place, and prompting it, you always feel like you're at risk from Oranga Tamariki, and who knows what they'll throw at you just by
Mm.
speaking out. It's actually really scary.
So is this quite freeing now? Do you feel like you're not having to look over your shoulder?
Over 450 kids over 23 plus years. There'll always be a sense of not feeling 100% safe. Freeing as in, yes, I can speak more freely because
Mm.
I don't always have to think, oh, I said that, are Tamariki going to take it wrong? Are they going to twist it? Are they going to shut us down? All that sort of stuff.
Mm. Um, this question, I don't want to sound judgmental at all, but I've got to ask it. Why not stay in the system and fix it from within?
Hmm. That is what I tried to do for 23 plus years. I
Mm.
got involved in politics in a hope that we could somehow change policy and bring reality into the situation. It's a really, really hard battle.
Mm.
And there's also, I guess, working with the type of youth that we have over the time we have, you're always on alert. Your adrenaline's always going, You get up throughout the night, you do checks on the boys. Are they huffing? Are they this?
Mm.
Is there something going on at 3 o'clock in the morning? High
Mm.
alert all the time. Since not caregiving, I actually got diagnosed with acute stress at the time. And it's like 23 plus years of everything we've been through. That's a lot to deal with because it's not
Mm.
just one situation, it's continual all the time. You're on high alert
Yeah.
24/7, and it takes its toll after a
Mm.
while.
Yeah. And for those who are thinking I'm being mean asking that question, look, I take my hat off to you and Jim. I think, 23 years is incredible service, and well done, good and faithful servants. Just to put that in perspective, but I guess I was just being devil's advocate because let's take it a step further. You're the Minister for Children, Mel. What would you do? What steps would you take to fix some of these issues?
That's a hard one because there's already a lot of governmental policies working against you. But I would be taking those on the front line and getting them to start creating policy because they know what's going on the front line. And like I said before, the further up the chain you get in any organisation or in government, the less concept they have of what's going on the ground. So that's probably where I'd start, with good policy writers that understand the magnitude of what's going on.
It doesn't surprise you that we're short of caregivers in New Zealand. And in fact, I read in this report that, some of the social workers said they would be driving around all day just trying to find someone to look after a child overnight, struggling to find caregivers. Does it surprise you that we can't find caregivers because they just don't feel they're going to be protected?
100%. No, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I wouldn't advocate for anyone I know to become a caregiver, not in today's environment, not with what's going on, not with empowered children and the level of complex needs they have, and a system that will only protect themselves at the end of the day and throw you under the bus in a second. I wouldn't support any of my friends wanting to become caregivers. That is so sad. That's tragic. We shouldn't be in a country where that's even a thing.
What response did you get to your resignation letter?
I got nothing from, just an acknowledgement from Oranga Tamariki that they'd received it, and that's all I expected. I got private responses from the other people that I CC'd into it. The office for our local MP has actually been amazing, really amazing. And they're well aware of what's been going on, and it's like there's almost not much they can do. There are principals out there that are fighting against Oranga Tamariki for the, well-being of children that are in their school. Yeah.
Well, I'll try and figure out how we can somehow get you on the Queen's Birthday Honours list, you and Jim, for sterling service. It seems incredible that they have. You'd think they'd put on at least a morning tea for 23 years plus. It's insulting, isn't it? It's just incredible. Have you just finally, have you found that a few people have been contacting you who have heard you speak out and sort of want to, a bit of a solidarity union of people, disaffected OT caregivers?
Oh, definitely. There's numerous caregivers, ex-caregivers, the majority, well, everyone we know that, we had a solid caregiver team with, none of them are doing caregiving anymore for the same reasons we're not. And I really want to point out that it's not Jim and myself that have done all the work. Firstly, we couldn't have done this without God. There is just no possible way. And secondly, I'm so proud of so many youth that we've worked with that have become, amazing adults. It's all we've done is given them tools, and some of them have grabbed them and run with them, and we're so proud. And even though that we're not working with young people, we are working with a lot of young adults and adults at the moment, even ones that were in our care that are in their, late 30s, where godparents, the kids that have had kids. So yeah, it's not us, it's a way bigger picture, and we're just so proud of all those kids that have, taken the tools and run with them.
Yeah. Mel, thank you for this, and look, we wish you and Jim a restful retirement. You have served above and beyond, and but I hope that what you've shared, is an encouragement to others to speak out. But just your work for young people and for caregivers, and just for strengthening families in general, your work overall. So we're just grateful for that. And to you and Jim, enjoy retirement. You've been good and faithful servants.
Thank you.